So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and launch our first scenario and see if we can work our way through it. So let's go back up here. Here's going to be our first scenario. We can literally just copy and paste this command. And as long as we set up our profile correctly, and I didn't break anything when I made my fake Hack Smarter profile, it should work. So fingers crossed, let's see what happens. Using my default profile CloudGoat that I have all set up. We have our whitelist.txt, which is our one valid IP address or range, and that should be automatic if you ran those. And now we're going to initialize some provider plugins. Now we just kind of hang out, wait, enjoy the ride. It only takes like a minute or so. Grab a drink of water. While this is getting the scenario set up, I'm curious about those of you on Twitch. Do any of you have AWS pen testing experience? If you do, would love to hear about it or how experienced you are. And then I could always learn from you guys. If you see this, it's showing all of our cool stuff getting set up. We will be Bilbo. So you can see our profile, scenario ID. In the meantime, each scenario has a scenario page, and I'll show this to you guys real quick. I can close these windows out now, I think. So kind of like a Try Hack Me. It really reminds me of Try Hack Me a lot. So here's our scenario. We have our size is small, difficulty is easy, our command to run it, the resources that are being created. Ang310 says the silence has spoken. Yeah, so AWS pen testing is not something a lot of people have experience with. I think partly is it's intimidating because you have to have your own environment. But hopefully this is showing you guys it's not as difficult as it seems, at least to use CloudGoat. The other part of it is there's not really any good resources online like Try Hack Me or Hack the Box that teaches cloud penetration testing. I believe Hack the Box does have a path on AWS. A fortress, I think is the right term. Haven't checked it out. I'm sure it's helpful. But there are other AWS and Azure and GCP resources are actually behind a pretty massive paywall. You need a business account, a business license with Hack the Box to have access to that. I believe Try Hack Me is also going to be coming out with some cloud stuff, but once again, only available to business users. So there's not too many resources out there for consumers like you and me, for noobs like you and me, to learn cloud pen testing. But if you want to be a penetration tester and you're in the interview for a pen testing role and you can tell them like, I know AWS pen testing, I think that will really help you stand out. Ang31 said there's some great info at Cloud Hacktrix pen testing, Cloud AWS pen testing. We can check that out real quick. There are some other really good links that people at Rhino have shared with me. I don't have them handy right now, but I'm sure we'll refer back to them. Let's check out Hacktrix real quick, just for fun. Oh, look at that. Look at the top lab to learn on Hacktrix, CloudGoat. #1. And that's what we are doing right now. So love that we have a shout out to Rhino Security Labs right at Hacktrix. That is awesome. So we have our pen test or red team methodology. Permissions for a pen test. Who am I? Okay, cool. So some basic AWS CLI commands. If you have a key, get inside error message. I am enumeration. Oh, so cool. So I'm sure we'll be referring back to this as we learn and as we work our way through this. Let's check out our scenario. It has been created. Okay, so a few important things that we see here. We have our AWS account ID, and now here's our access key ID and our secret key, because what CloudGoat did is it created this Bilbo account in your AWS environment. And remember, I shared with you before, you need to note the secret key because it disappears. So here's our secret key. Here's our access key ID, and I'll show you guys what this looks like in your environment. So I'm in my CloudGoat environment here. If we go to like IAM, which is kind of like the user section of AWS, we should see a Bilbo user. Let's see if we do. So we'll go one user. And there's Bilbo. So there's our Vulnerable Lambda Bilbo account. So you can see CloudGoat created this account and that's the account that we are going to be playing around with. So if you're following along in your own AWS environment, you can check that way to see if the account was created. But what we need to do now is this beginning one is we are going to use the AWS CLI. So we're not using any automated tools to do this first scenario. We're going to walk through it manually. But the first thing we need to do is set up a profile for our Bilbo user. So very similar to how we set up the Hack Smarter profile, we're going to set up a Bilbo profile. And the way we do that was configure profile Bilbo, like that. And it's going to ask us for our AWS access key ID. We can get that right there. So we'll go ahead and copy that and paste that down there. Boom. And now our secret access key right here. So I'll copy that and paste that down there. And then this you can just enter through there. Now we should be the AWS Bilbo user. And let me just show you guys a cheat sheet because we're actually going to work off of this. We're not going to try to wing it, at least not our first scenario, just so we can get a feel for everything that, honestly, so I can get a feel for everything that's going on. I haven't even done this scenario yet. I just did the very beginning to make sure everything works. So here's our walkthrough, kind of explaining high level what it's going to do, but there's a cheat sheet that's going to walk us through each command. And I think this will be helpful for as we begin, so we get a feel for some of this stuff. And I think it's important, and I might be weird in this, but to type out our commands. I think it helps build muscle memory. So although we could, easily just copy and paste all these commands, let's type it out manually. Let's make some mistakes, and let's build that muscle memory as we learn some of the AWS syntax. So we'll do AWS profile Bilbo. You can see from when I was doing this before, region US East 1. Actually it's not that's from a little bit ahead. So STS get caller identity. And if you remember from the hack tricks, that was actually kind of like a who am I? So I remember seeing this command here. The easiest way, but might be monitored, is this. Who am I? It's going to tell us kind of our full user account. It says the full ARN and full name of your user. So let's see if we have everything configured properly. There we go. So we have our user ID, we have our account, and our ARN right there, ARN. I don't even know the proper way to say that. We'll call it ARN. But there it is there. Now it says, what we need to do now is this command will list the policies attached to your user. And our username is going to be this full CG Bilbo Vulnerable Lambda. Yours is going to be different, of course. At least I'm pretty sure it's going to be unique. So let's go ahead and see if we can list the policies attached to our user. So if we do AWS profile Bilbo, I know it's a little monotonous to type it out each time, but once again, I think that muscle memory is important. And we'll do list user policies. And we could target, I suppose, any user if we had multiple users in an AWS environment to see what policies they have access to if we're working on enumeration or figuring out some type of lateral movement. Now, I think all we need to do is copy this. You can actually see it from when I did it before, like that. Fingers crossed. There we go. So we can see this policy name, this vulnerable lambda, and we have this standard user assumer. So we can assume some type of role. And anytime you encounter something that might be a little bit strange, let's just look that up, right? So if we look at standard user assume AWS, let's just see what comes up. So it means that we have permission to assume roles. Obviously, kind of based on the name, that's pretty obvious. Let's jump back to our CloudGoat scenario. So we can enumerate our policy, or list the policies attached to our user. Now this command will list all of your permissions. So let's go ahead and run that command. I think this is as far as I made it when I was testing stuff. So the rest of this, completely new to me. We'll see how bad I stumbled through it. All right, so it's get user policy, user name, and now here is our username. Like that. And then what was it? Policy name. It must be the policy from above. So policy name, and let's grab our policy name right here. And paste that in there. And I can't see my keyboard because of my, my microphone. All right, so far so good. So let's see if we can understand what is coming back here. So we have our username. We know that. That's the full username of our Bilbo user. So I think we all understand that, at least I do. We have our policy name, which is that standard user assumer. We have this policy document. This is, I think, just the standard template. And now here's our statement. So here's our action, STS assume role, and we kind of already learned that we can assume some type of role. The effect is allow. I suppose if it was deny, it would be a little bit different there. Here's the specific resource it's referring to, which this seems to be our vulnerable Lambda function. It has a wildcard at the end. I wonder if that's going to come into play later. I don't know if you guys heard my son. He's playing Lincoln Logs. I think his Lincoln Log house just fell over. I just heard him screech like a pterodactyl. We have our actions here. Once again, these wildcards are interesting to me. Usually when you see a wildcard in pen testing in general, it can be abused. And I guess I'm not even for sure if those are wildcards in AWS, but that stands out to me immediately. So we have these actions: get, list, simulate custom policy, simulate principal policy, effect, allow, and then resource once again is a wildcard, as if this applies to everything. So let's just spend some time learning about what we're looking at right now. And in the meantime, I'm actually going to check some work stuff, make sure I'm not missing anything. Rhino graciously allowed me to hang out and do this during the day. So just want to make sure I'm not missing anything on the work side of it. And then we will dive back into things. No, looks like I'm good. Nate, if I'm missing anything, feel free to tell me on Twitch to check Slack. All right, let's look some of these things up. So we don't need to look up username. We don't need to look up policy, but let's look up this action. Let's see if we can get an understanding of what this action actually means. So let's just go that. Okay, assume role. Let me zoom in so you guys can see this. Returns a set of temporary security credits that you can use to access AWS resources. These temporary credentials consist of an access key ID, a secret access key, and a security token. Typically, you use assume role within your account or for cross-account access. For a comparison of assume role with other API things, okay, the temporary security credits created by assume role can be used to make API calls to any AWS service with the following exception. You cannot do that. You can pass inline or manage session policies. When you create a role, you create two policies, a role trust policy. Okay, so we have some cross-account role type stuff here that can be done or within our own account, this whole assume role thing. Okay, I'm curious about so if we have IAM get wildcard, let's just read, if I do exploit, let's check out these blogs and just really glance through them. And I'm just showing you guys, this is how I learn stuff in real time. So this is how I passed the OSCP. This is how I've gotten started. This is how I got my pen testing job, is you slow down, right? And just Google stuff when you're curious about it and read through it. Thank you for visiting. Can I help you in any way? No, you cannot. Well, there's probably many ways you can help me. I just want to glance really quick through here. Practice using, okay, how to use IAM vulnerable. Oh, so this is kind of like a training thing as well. They're using Terraform to set it up. So basically what we're doing here with CloudGoat, I'm going to skip to this one. Exploiting IAM permissions for total cloud compromise, a real world example. So is this an S3 bucket? Oh, Hadoop. Oh, I've done some Hadoop pen test. Well, not legit pen testing. There's a really cool, unique room on Trey Hack Me about Hadoop created by my friend Amoeba Man. I created a stream of it, and it's on my YouTube page, and actually Amoeba Man joined us for the live stream, and he explained Hadoop for us. So if you're interested in Hadoop, make sure you check that out. All right, we have AWS access keys, all that stuff. AWS has 3 ways of accessing resources through APIs. Okay, this is talking about pivoting access. So this is S3 buckets that we're looking at right now, which S3 buckets, the way I understand S3 buckets, that makes sense for me. It's kind of like FTP. So S3 buckets are often used by websites where they store images and scripts on there that are then loaded on a website. If you can take over an S3 bucket and it's connected to a website, I mean, you can inject malicious JavaScript, anything you want that will be loaded on the website. And usually you can access an AWS bucket like a specific resource because it has to be public to be viewed on a website, but you shouldn't be able to list all the files in an AWS bucket. In the same way, if you think of FTP, which I think many of us know of if you do like try hack me or hack the box, you don't, well, if you get unauthenticated access to FTP, and sometimes, at least on Hack the Box machines, that FTP will actually be hosting files for like a web root on a website, and sometimes you can upload like a shell.aspx file into FTP and then trigger it from the website, and you can get a reverse shell on the server. I've done that a few times on different machines. I don't think this is going to help us with our current question, but let's just keep reading. Maybe there's nothing real interesting that we can learn from that. But I am curious about like wildcards, right? So if we do like AWS wildcard exploit permissions, I should really just be asking ChatGPT. He'd probably be able to help me pretty well. Avoid granting wildcard permissions in IAM policies. Now, what do you guys see here? What looks like to me is wildcard permissions in IAM policies. IAM supports the wildcard. So I was right that is a wildcard in both the resources and action attributes. So here's our action attributes, and here's our resources. So in resources, we have a wildcard, and on action, we have a wildcard. Making it easier, automatically select multiple matching items. These may be useful when developing and testing functions in specific development AWS accounts with no access to production data. However, you should ensure that star permissions are never used when granting permissions with the allow effect in production environments, which is what is going on here. Wildcards may be used to deny permissions. This reduces policy size and improves readability, but this isn't denying us, this is allowing us. Wildcard permissions grant broad permissions, often for many permissions or resources. Many AWS managed policies, such as administrator access, provide broad access intended only for user roles. These should never be applied to Lambda functions. Oh. Okay, so look at that. We have here our Lambda function, Lambda invoker, wildcard, and this says these should never be applied to Lambda functions. So when we're talking about a vulnerable Lambda function, I bet this is why it's vulnerable, is because of the wildcard. The section using multiple AWS accounts for managing quotas shows a multiple account example. Okay. Sweet. So I think we're getting a feel. Like, we know if we're doing a pen test or a machine, if we see a Lambda function with a wildcard on it, that should pique up our ears, and we should remember, hey, I think that's exploitable. Oh, let's zoom back out now that I zoomed in. I don't even remember where we're at. I think we were here. This command will list all of your permissions. So now list all roles and assume a role for privilege escalation. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do AWS profile, bilbo. Once again, we'll type it out to try to build some of that muscle memory. List roles, grep CG, like that. HunterBot said, are you or Nate going to do a pen test story when you go on your first real pen test? I've done a bunch of pen tests, but we can't share about our pen tests because, of course, the information is confidential. So we're really limited on what we can talk about. But we're both doing legit pen tests every day. It's a blast. Okay, so this will give you all the roles in your account, one of which should be assumable. So here are our roles. I'm actually going to make this a big screen so we can look at it. If I run this again, will it take up the full screen? There we go. That's just a little easier to look at. So once again, let's slow down and see if we can identify what is going on here. We have our bilbo profile, our region. Here's our command, of course, that we ran. So here's what we're getting back. So we have this role name, CG Lambda Invoker Vulnerable Lambda, blah, 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 ARN right here. And it says one of these should be assumable. Well, there's only one role. So I'm assuming that's the role that it's referring to, right? Let me go ahead and put this off to the side again. This command will list all the roles in your account, one of which should be assumable. So I only see one role. So I'm just going to assume that is the one that is assumable. This command will list all the policies for the target role. So let's go ahead and type that out. AWS profile, bilbo, region, US East 1, IAM, list role policies, role name, And I believe we're just going to drop the name of the role right there. Yep, CG target role. So let's go ahead and grab this. Copy that. Paste that. And let's see if that works. An error occurred when calling the list role policies operation. The role with that one cannot. Oh, I probably just missed something. I'm gonna glance over the chat. HunterBot said, "Do you think the stuff on OSCP has helped you on real pen tests?" Yeah, it's a good question. So I would probably answer that in a few different ways. The actual OSCP exam I found really helpful and realistic. Now, I'm of course limited on what I can say, so OffSec doesn't get mad at me about OSCP, but really enjoyed the exam experience. And I think what the OSCP does well, that applies to the real world environment, one is the pressure. Right now, in a real pen test, there's actually not a whole lot of pressure because we have multiple days to perform a pen test, and we get an entire day to write a report. But the OSCP, you have 24 hours to hack a bunch of machines and then another 24 hours to write a report. Now, I did all of it, and I think I did the entire exam. So I finished the OSCP in 8 hours and then wrote my report while I was making the proctor watch me write the report. So did another 6 hours and finished the exam, I think in whatever that comes to if you do the math. So what's realistic is the research behind the OSCP, either the OSCP itself or just as you're working your way through machines, is paying attention to small details. And this is what people say on Reddit: enumeration, enumeration, enumeration. That's key to passing the OSCP. I think that's key to a real life pen test is enumeration, paying attention to the small details, slowing down and Googling everything and just following kind of wherever your gut leads you. Now, what I like about real pen tests as opposed to CTF, so when you're doing like a hack the box machine, there's almost always just one path to exploiting the machine, to elevating your privileges, to taking over another account. And if you miss that one path and you fall down a rabbit hole, you're out of luck. When it comes to a real pen test, I would argue there's not really rabbit holes, because if you find something that's interesting, dig into it, because in a real pen test, you're reporting everything for vulnerabilities. Your goal isn't just to get remote code execution. Your goal is to strengthen the client's environment. So if you find like version information being disclosed, that is a vulnerability. That might be a lower informational vulnerability, but that's something the client should be aware of. So it's a much more organic process when you do a real pen test as opposed to a CTF. But I still do CTFs. I'm still on Hack the Box all the time. Still on Try Hack Me all the time. I find all of it helpful. OSCP was helpful. I think the name recognition is especially important for the OSCP. But I think there's other certs out there now, such as the PMPT through TCM Security or the CPTS. I think I'm saying that right, through Hack the Box. I don't know if you guys have done Hack the Box Academy, but I was working through the CPTS path, which is Certified Penetration Testing Specialist. I think I have from Hack the Box. Of course, does not have the name recognition of the OSCP, but their like learning material was incredible, super realistic, and actually really close to what we do in real engagements and real assessments. So if anyone is looking to like really learn what's it like to be on a pen test, Hack the Box Academy, their pen tester path for the CPTS, super realistic and really helpful. So check it out. Hopefully that answered your question, HunterBot. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. CTFs and real pen tests are just quite a bit different. All right, where were we at? Oh, we had this error. So I'm going to go ahead and make this big again. Did we miss something on here? Yeah, we did. So you see it was actually cut off. So if we go here again, and we need to get this full thing. It was cut off, I think, because I minimized the screen. Let me jump back over here, and then I'm going to glance at the chat. Let's try to run this. Boom. Is it going to work? Fingers crossed. Okay, that worked. HunterBot said, I'm on the CPTS exam right now. I just got enough points to pass. I'm trying to go for just 100 points now. Dude, that is awesome. So what do you think about it, HunterBot? The CPTS. I haven't actually talked to anyone who has taken the exam. You get 10 days, I believe, to take it. Report's mandatory. You have to write a professional pen test report, which they have an entire module on reporting that I found really helpful reading through it. Let me know your thoughts, HunterBot, in the chat of the exam overall. And I'm just going to read it out loud for those watching on YouTube after the fact so you can hear his thoughts raw on the exam directly from Twitch. But okay, we enumerated that. Let's jump. I might just keep these full screen and we might have to jump back, and I might have to copy and paste. as we jump back and forth. I actually have 3 monitors in front of me, but you guys can only see 1 monitor, so I'm limited to doing everything on my 1 monitor. Okay, which one did we just run? So it was this one. This command will list all policies for the target role. So we targeted that role, this role right here, and here's the policy, Lambda Invoker. Okay. This command will get you credentials for the CloudGoat role that can invoke Lambda. Interesting. I just want to see if I can understand this. If we go here, let's read about this, if we can find some information on this. Okay, let's glance at this. Oh, look at came across Rhino Security Labs. Let's see what Rhino Security Labs has to say about vulnerable lambdas. So it's talking through CloudGoat. We have the new vulnerable lambda scenario, which we are doing, and we have a spoiler warning, but that's totally okay because we're learning this. And this post will explain some things. I'm just going to kind of glance through here. The rest of this post is a walkthrough. If you want to work through the scenario on your own, first click here to find the CloudGoat on GitHub. So let's just glance through here. Enumeration in hardened AWS environments, identifying Lambda as a target. So after the permission enumeration process, you'll see that the bilbo user has IAM get and IAM list for resource, which we noticed that. And so you can check out which permissions the CG Lambda Invoker role has with the techniques described above. The name of the CG Lambda Invoker role and the associated permissions both point toward the Lambda service as a possible target. We don't have the IAM pass role permission, which is required for common privesc involving the Lambda service. However, this does not mean that the Lambda service should be ignored. Improperly configured Lambdas can still be exploited. Oh, so we're going to do some SQL injection type stuff. Okay, this is cool. Let's glance back over at our GitHub and keep working our way through this. Over at the Twitch chat, here's what HunterBot said about CPTS. He said, extremely hard exam. And just for context, HunterBot has both OSCP and he also passed the technical portion of PMPT, so he knows this stuff. And like you mentioned, there's one way to exploit a machine. If you can't root the first machine, then you can't advance to the next machine and so on. Yeah, and that's really the only downside of these kinds of exams and CTFs in general, is there's only one way to do things. Now, I don't think I can share too much about this, but I will just say pay attention to some stuff TryHackMe is going to be releasing in the near future that will be doing some red team stuff with more than one path, which I think will be helpful. HunterBot, what do you think about the difficulty of CPTS compared to OSCP and PMPT, since you've done both of those? I'd be curious your overall thoughts. Okay, so this command will give you credentials for the CloudGoat role that can invoke lambdas. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy it only because I'm going to need both my screen here. So role session name, whatever we want here. So we can call this whatever we want. We'll call this Hack Smarter. And our role AR in, so the CG Lambda, come on. My arrow keys in VMware, I don't know why it does this, but they stick. So if I hold them, they just keep moving. So we're going to get the role AR in, which I believe would it be this full thing right here? I believe so. Let's give it a shot. Role name, role session name, region, everything else looks good. Let's hit enter. Ooh. Okay, so what we have here is a few things. We have our access key ID, our secret access key, which we know about that, and we have a session token, an expiration for the session token, so it's kind of like a JWT token, but obviously not JWT, but that's what it makes me think of. Assumed role user, assumed role ID, Hack Smarter, and our ARN right here. Glancing over the Twitch chat, HunterBot said, compared to CPTS, he says OSCP equals the EJPT and PMPT equals CPTS light. So you're saying CPTS is more difficult than all of it from your experience. Interesting. So list all roles and assume a role for privesc. So remember, we have that assumed, so we have this assumed role ID. Okay, let's just keep working our way through this. List lambdas to identify the target or the vulnerable lambda. So this command will show you all Lambda functions. The function belonging to CloudGoat, the name should start with CG, which we noticed, can apply a predefined set of AWS managed policies to users. In reality, it can only modify the Bilbo user. Okay, so let's go ahead and, whoops, I don't need to do Control-Shift-C in the internet. That's only in terminal. Okay, so list functions, Lambda, that's all good. So I think the only thing we need to update is our assumed role here, right? Is it telling us to enter our assumed role? Or is it just assumed role? Let me glance back at this. Right, because usually it will say like enter that. So maybe it's just assumed role. Maybe that's like a variable. Let's see what happens. Okay, the config profile assumed role cannot be found. So no, it has to actually be updated. Would it be, oh, would it be hack smarter? So if I did profile hack smarter, is that my assumed role? I don't know. We'll find out. We'll figure it out. Nope, not that one. So is the assumed role like the assumed role ID here? I mean, with our role session name, assumed role ID, maybe it's that? Whoops. Otherwise, we might have to glance at that blog post by good old Rhino Security Labs and see if we can figure it out. Or I'm going to phone a friend and I'll get someone from Rhino to jump on stream and explain it to us. Who's better at this stuff than I am. All right. Region US East 1 Lambda list functions. The config profile cannot be found. Profile assumed role. Okay, let's just glance at this again. So here's the command we ran. Role session name hack smarter. So we can do anything we want there. We get this access key ID, our secret access key, our session token, our assumed role ID, and our ARN. Is it the ARN that we need? It should just be hack smarter, I feel like. Okay, let's glance at a few things. Let's look at this. After the permission enumeration process, you see the Bilbo user has the imget, blah, 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 blah. The name, okay, does not mean. The AWS Lambda get function CLI returns a very important field. Code. Okay, well, we haven't got to that part. Look at the Lambda source code. So this is what we're trying to get. We're trying to get to that part. So we might have to do some reading on this. Lambda get function CLI. AWS profile, assumed role, region. This command will give you credentials for the CloudGoat role that can invoke Lambda. CloudGoat role. All right, for those of you on Twitch, let me know what you guys think should go there. We have our access key ID, we have our session token, assumed role user, right, which is hack smarter. We tried that a full assume role ID. We tried the ARN. Well, I guess I haven't tried that full ARN, but I don't. Maybe it's this. Did we try this? Let's try that. So if we do AWS profile, that region US East 1 Lambda list functions. Dang it. What are we missing, y'all? List lambdas to identify the target vulnerable lambda. I mean, if I just do that with Bilbo, it's not going to work, right? So, okay, so that user is not authorized to perform this role because no identity-based policy allows a lambda list functions action. Okay, so we at least got a different error message. When we get a different error message, that's good. But why doesn't hack? Oh, guys, I know what the issue is. So remember when I made my fake hack smarter profile? And when I ran this command, I think it's trying to use that fake hack smarter profile when I'm running profile. So actually, let's try this. Let's rerun this command, and let's just call this Mr. Robot. Okay, now I'm curious. Now if we do profile Mr. Robot, region US East 1, lambda list functions. Oh no, I thought that would fix it. Do we need to set up? Oh, do I need to set up? Okay, so if I do AWS configure profile, and we'll call this Mr. Robot like that, I wonder if I have to set it up this way. Yeah, I bet this is how you do it. See, you guys are watching me learn in real time. We'll drop the access key there, and then we'll grab the secret key, and then when we run it, the profile command, it should work. No! An error occurred when calling the list functions operation. The security token included in the request is invalid. Why though? I'm curious. Does this show anything? Like, is there any extra users in here? No? Oh man, we might be stuck here. I might have to phone a friend and jump back to this tomorrow and see if we can make our way through this. Kelly Max said, looking at error message, again, I think you need to include all of it. All of what? Hunterbot said Hacktrix is your friend. Okay. So, well, let's try a few things. So first we'll try Callie's idea. He says include all of it. So I think he means the assumed role ID is what he's talking about. I'll try this one more time. Then we'll go look at Hacktrix and see if we can figure this out. Well, it's about the end of my workday. And so I'll be jumping off stream to go have supper soon. Oh, no, from user. From user. From user. I don't know what user you're referring to. Am I blind? Hacktrix AWS. Let's see what we can learn. Basic enumeration. Who am I? I am enumeration, service enumeration, publicly exposed services. Oh, he says it was in the error message. The config profile, Mr. Robot, cannot be found. Error unrecognized. Error occurred. User. Oh, I see what you're saying. So we need the full user of the person we're creating, which should be this. Oh, maybe it's this? I mean, we set up the profile. So the profile should be the same, but obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. So let's try it. Nope. Let's see if there's anything here. Lambda Prevesc. All right, Hacktrix. A user with IAM pastoral, which we don't have, create function, invoke function, which is what we have, right? Isn't it invoke function, I think? can escalate privileges by passing an existing IAM role to a new Lambda function that includes code to import the relevant AWS library to the programming language of choice and using it to perform actions of their choice. An attacker could abuse this to get a reverse shell and steal the token. I don't think that's how we're doing this one. Like in the previous scenario, you can grant yourself the Lambda invoke function permission if you have the permission add permission. I wonder if I copy, I'm just going to copy, well, we'll just search for list functions. They don't have it. I'm sure I'm missing something like super obvious that when I figure out what it is, I'm going to feel silly about it. This command will show you all Lambda functions. A function belonging to CloudGoat. The name should start with CG. Can apply to a predefined set. List Lambda. This command will give you credentials for the CloudGoat role that can invoke Lambdas. Which it did, and we added it as a profile. What else would I do? So if we go back up to like the who am I command, if I run this, but on our, whoops, I did copy wrong. We don't need to inspect the element. If we run this, and we call it the profile Mr. Robot, I wonder what it will return to us. Come on. Arrow keys. Let's try this. Mr. Robot. So we're airing out on there. The security token included in the request is invalid. Which we took the secret access key. It's access key ID and the secret access key. Our assumed role ID. I don't know. I'm really confused. Okay, so bilbo works, so our command is correct. But nothing else works. So how do we impersonate that? Look at the Lambda source code, invoke that. Now that bilbo's an admin, use credits for that user to list seek or some secret manager. Of course we can't do that yet because we can't figure this out. This will list all the roles in your account, one of which should be assumable. Oh, hold up. Let's try this command again. If I do that, oh wait, that wasn't the right command. Didn't copy it. Or did it? No, it didn't. Come on. Thank you. There's our role right there. That might be the assumable role that it's referring to. So if I go like this, and we'll go to the assumed role here. So we have our role name here. If I copy that and go there. No. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like why would the role name go in profile? Is it just, no, it's not just a CG thing because that's right there. That's just the vulnerable lambda. One of these which should be assumable. Assume role. Our roll session name will be failure. I don't understand what I'm missing. And this is asking for this full thing here. Profile bilbo, region, assume role, role arn. There's our failure account. All right, let's glance back at this. So list lambdas to identify the target vulnerable lambda. Is this a typo? Should it be a dash? No, I doubt it. All right, guys, it's about the end of my day. I'm going to have to jump off so I can check messages and all that good stuff. But I'll figure it out. I'll be back on stream tomorrow, and I will explain to you guys what I'm missing. But thank you for hanging out. Hopefully you at least learned something, how to set it up and how to watch me get stuck on something that should seem obvious. I'm sure when I come back tomorrow and explain what I was missing, we'll all laugh about it. But guys, thank you. Thank you for hanging out. I will catch you guys in the next stream. See ya.